Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into a world where things aren't always what they seem. Picture this. A tiny, cleaner wrasse just swimming right into the mouth of a huge moray eel.
Looks like instant doom, right?
Exactly. But the eel just hangs there because the wrasse, it's not lunch, it's like the eel's dentist picking off parasites.
It's incredible. The wrasse gets food, the eel gets cleaned, a classic win-win.
And that amazing little scene, that partnership, it's just one example of what goes on in a biological community, which is really just a group of different species living close enough together that they interact. So today we're digging into Chapter 41, Ecological Communities, from Campbell Biology in Focus. Our mission, to sort of unpack how species interact, what shapes these communities, the role of disturbance, which is pretty interesting, how geography fits in, and crucially, the impact of pathogens.
And we'll try to connect it all to why it matters in the real world.
Absolutely. By the end, you'll have a much richer grasp of the living world, from the tiny battles happening in your garden to big global health issues, all without cracking open the textbook. Okay, let's get into it. First up, how species actually interact with each other.
Yeah, these interspecific interactions are incredibly varied. It's not all dramatic predator-prey stuff. We usually classify them by how they affect each species involved. Is it positive, negative, or neutral?
A plus, a minus, or a zero, basically.
Right. And we can group them into three main buckets: competition, exploitation, and positive interactions.
Okay, let's start with competition. That sounds pretty straightforward, a classic minus-minus deal, right?
Exactly. Both species are negatively affected because they're fighting over the same limited resource. Think about weeds in your garden plants going after the same water and nutrients.
Or like lynx and foxes both trying to catch snowshoe hares.
Perfect example. The key word, though, is limited. If there's plenty of something like, say, oxygen in the air for land animals, there's no competition for it.
Gotcha. So scarcity drives competition.
Precisely. And this leads to a really fundamental idea, the competitive exclusion principle. Back in the 1930s, G.F. Gause did these experiments with paramecium, tiny little protists. And he found that if two species needed the exact same things, one, P. aurelia, would always outcompete and eliminate the other, P. cardatum, when they were put together.
So basically, two species can't do the exact same job in the same place indefinitely?
That's the core takeaway.
Yeah.
They can't coexist permanently if their ecological niches are identical. Nature just doesn't seem to allow that kind of complete overlap.
Okay, you mentioned ecological niche. What exactly does that mean? It sounds like more than just an address.
Oh, much more. It's the organism's total role in the ecosystem, not just where it lives, but all the resources it uses, temperature range, food sources when it's active, the whole package.
Like a job description.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's ecological job description. Think of a tropical lizard. Its niche includes the heat it needs, the size of branches it sits on, the time of day it hunts, the specific insects it eats, all of it.
So, if identical niches lead to exclusion, how do similar species manage to live together? They must have ways around it.
They do. They evolve to use different resources or the same resources in different ways. We call this resource partitioning.
Oh, okay.
Like those Anolis lizards in the Dominican Republic. You've got several species all eating insects, but one prefers sunny branches up high, another likes shady branches down low, and so on. They divide up the habitat.
So they specialize, carving out slightly different niches to avoid stepping on each other's toes. Makes sense.
And this leads to the idea of a fundamental niche versus a realized niche. The fundamental niche is everything a species could potentially use or tolerate.
The ideal world scenario.
Right. But the realized niche is where it actually lives and what it actually uses, often because competition pushes it out of parts of its fundamental niche.
Like those barnacles.
Exactly. Joseph Connell's famous study. The Cathamalus barnacles could live lower down on the rocks. That was part of their fundamental niche. But the Balanus barnacles were better competitors down there. So Cathamalus ended up restricted to a higher, drier zone, its realized niche.
Wow. And can we see the ghost of competition past, so to speak, like evidence that it happened even if it's not intense right now?
Yes, through something called character displacement.
Okay.
This is fascinating. You find closely related species that look quite similar when they live in separate geographic areas. We call that allopatric.
Okay.
But when those same species occur together in the same area, sympatric, they often show physical differences that reduce competition. Think Galápagos finches, where different species coexist. Their beak sizes often diverge. allowing them to specialize on different size seeds.
So the differences become more pronounced where they compete directly. That's clear evolutionary evidence.
It really is. It shows how competition can be a powerful evolutionary force over time.
All right, so that's competition, the minus minus. What about exploitation? That's a plus minus, right? One benefits, one is harmed.
Correct. This covers several types of interactions. The most obvious is predation. One species, the predator, kills and eats the other, the prey.
The classic nature documentary stuff. Lions and zebras.
Exactly. Predators have amazing adaptations, keen senses, heat sensors like rattlesnakes, claws, fangs, venom.
Ambush tactics, too, like that alligator snapping turtle with its tongue lure.
Yes, that's a perfect example of predatory mimicry. And prey, of course, evolved defenses in response. Hiding, running away, forming herds.
In camouflage, right, cryptic coloration.
Yep. Or the opposite, bright aposematic coloration, those warning colors on poisonous frogs or insects, basically shouting, "Don't eat me, I'm dangerous."
Then there's mimicry from the prey side, too, like a harmless snake looking like a venomous one.
That's partitioning mimicry. A harmless species mimics a harmful one, like that hawk moth larva that puffs up to look like a snakehead. It's all an evolutionary arms race.
Okay, so predation is one type of exploitation. What else fits here?
Herbivory. This is where an organism eats parts of a plant or alga. Usually doesn't kill the plant outright, but still harms it.
We usually think of cows or deer, but you mentioned most herbivores are actually invertebrates.
That's right. Insects, snails, and so on are huge players in herbivory. And plants fight back, of course, with chemical defenses like nicotine or strychnine, or physical ones like thorns and spines.
And the third type of exploitation.
Parasitism. Here, a parasite lives on or in a host organism, getting nourishment from it and harming it in the process.
Inside or outside the host?
Both. Endoparasites like tapeworms live inside. Ectoparasites like ticks or lice live outside. There are even parasitoid insects like wasps that lay eggs in caterpillars, and the larvae eat the host from the inside out.
Oh, creepy.
It can be. And some parasites have really complex life cycles needing multiple hosts. Some even manipulate the host's behavior to help them get to the next host. It's quite sophisticated in a disturbing way.
Okay, so we've covered competition and exploitation, plus ling. What about the friendlier side? Positive interactions.
Right. These are interactions where at least one species benefits and neither is harmed. So either plus plus or plus zero.
Let's start with the plus plus. Mutualism, both sides win.
Exactly. And these are incredibly important. Think about microbes in our gut helping digestion, or those mycorrhizal fungi helping plant roots absorb nutrients in exchange for sugars.
Or the cleaner wrasse and the eel we started with.
Perfect example. Another classic is the acacia tree and certain ants. The tree provides shelter in its hollow thorns and food, nectar. The ants, in return, defend the tree aggressively against herbivores and even clip away competing plants.
So it's a true partnership, but the benefits have to outweigh the costs for both, right?
Absolutely. That's key for it to be a stable mutualism.
And the other type, plus zero.
That's commensalism. One species benefits the others pretty much unaffected. Like shade-tolerant wildflowers growing under a big tree. The flowers get shade, the tree doesn't really gain or lose anything.
Or those cattle egrets following bison, eating the insects the bison kick up.
Classic example. The egrets get an easy meal. The bison likely don't even notice. Though sometimes these interactions can blur. If the egrets also happen to warn the bison of danger, it might shift towards mutualism.
Interesting how these aren't always rigid categories. And these positive interactions can be really significant for the whole community structure, can't they?
Definitely. You mentioned the black rush, juncus in salt marshes. By making the soil less salty and adding oxygen, it helps lots of other plants survive there. Remove juncus, and half the other species might disappear. It shows how one species' positive effect can ripple outwards.
So it's clear these one-on-one interactions are the building blocks, but how do we scale up? How do we describe the whole community, its diversity, its structure?
That's the next level. We look at community diversity and trophic structure. Diversity isn't just counting species, though that's part of it.
Right, it's got two components.
Yes. Species richness, the actual number of different species, and relative abundance, how common or rare each species is relative to the others.
So two forests could both have 10 tree species, but one might be mostly pine, while the other has a more even mix. The second one feels more diverse.
Exactly. Ecologists use tools like the Shannon Diversity Index to capture both richness and evenness in a single number. Higher values mean higher diversity.
But actually counting all the species, especially tiny or hidden ones, must be tough.
It is. Especially microbes. Molecular tools like DNA sequencing have revolutionized our ability to assess microbial diversity, which we now know is immense.
And why does this diversity matter so much? Is a more diverse community actually better?
Generally, yes. Decades of research, like the experiments at Cedar Creek in Minnesota, show that more diverse plant communities tend to be more productive. They grow more biomass.
Okay.
They're also better at withstanding stresses like drought, and their productivity is more stable from year to year. Plus, they're often more resistant to introduced species.
How so?
Well, in a diverse community, more of the available resources are already being used. There's less opportunity, less empty niche space for an invader to get established. One study showed introduced tunicates, sea squirts, had a much harder time invading high-diversity marine communities.
Okay, that makes intuitive sense. More competition for the newcomer. Now, what about trophic structure? That's the who eats whom part.
Pretty much. It describes the feeding relationships. The simplest view is a food chain. Energy flows from primary producers, plants, algae, to primary consumers, herbivores, then to secondary, tertiary, quaternary consumers, carnivores, and eventually everything gets broken down by decomposers. Each step is a trophic level.
But nature's rarely that simple, is it?
Not at all. It's usually a complex food web, with species feeding at multiple levels and many interconnected chains. Think of krill in the Antarctic eaten by whales, seals, penguins, fish, even other plankton. They're a hub in the web.
Within this web, do some species have a bigger influence than others?
Oh, definitely. Some species play an outsized role. We have foundation species. These are typically abundant or large, like trees forming a forest or kelp forming underwater forests. They basically create the habitat.
Okay, they provide the structure.
Then there are keystone species. These might not be abundant, but their ecological role is crucial. The classic example is the pisaster sea star on the Pacific coast.
It's the one that eats mussels.
That's the one. By keeping the dominant mussel population in check, pisaster allows many other species, algae, barnacles, limpets, to coexist in the intertidal zone. Remove the sea star and the mussels take over, drastically reducing diversity.
So a keystone species maintains diversity by controlling a dominant competitor. Got it. Any others?
We also talk about ecosystem engineers. These are species that physically alter the environment. Beavers are the poster child, building dams, creating ponds and wetlands where there was forest.
Changing the whole landscape.
Exactly. And sometimes foundation species, like trees, also act as ecosystem engineers by modifying light levels, soil conditions, etc.
So with all these connections, how do changes propagate through the food web? Does it flow up from the bottom or down from the top?
Both are possible. The bottom-up model suggests that the amount of nutrients, N, controls plant biomass, V, which controls herbivore numbers, H, which controls predator numbers, P, so NEV, change the nutrients and the effects ripple upwards.
Okay, resources limit everything up the chain.
But there's also the top-down model, or trophic cascade model. This argues that predators, P, limit herbivores, H, which then affects plants, V, which can influence nutrient levels, N. So PAHV effects cascade downwards, often with alternating effects. Fewer predators means more herbivores, which means fewer plants.
And this top-down idea is actually used in management. You mentioned biomanipulation.
Yes, it's been used to clean up lakes suffering from algal blooms caused by excess nutrients. In Lake Vesijärvi, in Finland, they removed fish that ate zooplankton. With fewer predators, the zooplankton, which eat algae, increased. More zooplankton meant less algae, and the water cleared up. A successful trophic cascade in action.
That's really cool. Using ecological principles to solve environmental problems.
It highlights how understanding these trophic dynamics is crucial. Communities are these intricate webs, influenced by diversity, feeding links, and these particularly impactful species.
It feels like we used to think of nature as being in perfect balance, but that idea has shifted, hasn't it?
Very much so. The older idea was equilibrium, maybe leading to a stable climax community. But the modern view, the non-equilibrium model, emphasizes that most communities are constantly recovering from or responding to disturbance.
And disturbance is what exactly? A fire, a storm.
Any event that removes organisms or changes resource availability, fires, storms, floods, droughts, even human activities like logging or farming. Change is the norm, not stability.
And maybe disturbance isn't always bad. I remember hearing about the intermediate disturbance hypothesis.
Ah, yes, that's a key concept. The idea is that moderate levels of disturbance often lead to higher species diversity than either very high or very low levels.
How does that work?
Well, think about it. High disturbance, too frequent or too intense, puts too much stress on organisms. Many species just can't survive. Low disturbance allows the best competitors to dominate and exclude others, reducing diversity.
But intermediate disturbance.
It creates opportunities. It opens up space and resources, preventing competitive exclusion. But it's not so harsh that it wipes everyone out. It allows a mix of good competitors and good colonizers to coexist. Studies in New Zealand streams found the highest number of invertebrate species at intermediate flood frequencies.
Interesting. And disturbance happens on different scales, right? Big fires versus, say, a tree falling in the forest.
Exactly. Small disturbances create patches, increasing habitat heterogeneity. But large ones are often natural too. Yellowstone National Park is a prime example. The lodgepole pines there actually depend on infrequent, intense fires. Their cones only open and release seeds in extreme heat.
So the huge 1988 fires, while dramatic, were part of a natural cycle.
Absolutely. The forests recovered relatively quickly, showing their adaptation to large-scale disturbance.
What happens after a major disturbance strips an area bare?
That kicks off ecological succession, the process of community change over time. If it starts in a virtually lifeless area, like new volcanic rock or land left by a retreating glacier, that's primary succession.
Starting from scratch, that must take ages.
It does. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of years. First, you get hardy pioneers like prokaryotes, protists, lichens, mosses. They slowly build soil. Then grasses, shrubs, trees eventually move in. Glacier Bay in Alaska is a classic study site for this, watching the sequence unfold as the ice retreats.
You see species like alder come in, which fix nitrogen and improve the soil, paving the way for later species like spruce and hemlock.
Precisely. Those early species can facilitate colonization by later ones. Then there's secondary succession, which happens when an existing community is disturbed but the soil remains intact, like after that Yellowstone fire, or in an abandoned farm field. It's much faster because the soil and some organisms are already there.
But human disturbance, that's often different, isn't it?
Unfortunately, yes. Human activities, agriculture, logging, urban development, ocean trawling, which just scrapes the seabed clean, are often so severe or frequent that they drastically reduce species diversity, unlike many natural disturbances which can enhance it at intermediate levels.
So disturbance is natural, even necessary, but our impact often pushes ecosystems too far. Okay, shifting gears again, let's zoom out even more. How does geography, like where you are on the globe, affect community diversity?
Hugely. This is biogeography. One of the most striking patterns is the latitudinal gradient.
More species in the tropics, fewer towards the poles.
Generally, yes. Darwin and Wallace noticed this long ago. A small patch of rainforest in Malaysia might have hundreds of tree species. A similar-sized patch in Michigan might have 10 or 20. Brazil has over 200 ant species. Alaska has 7.
Why is that? What drives this pattern?
Two main hypotheses. First, evolutionary history. The tropics haven't experienced the same level of disruption from things like ice ages. They're older, ecologically speaking, giving more time for speciation to occur.
More time, more species. Makes sense.
Second, climate. The tropics generally have more intense sunlight and higher rainfall. This leads to high evapotranspiration, the total amount of water evaporated and transpired. And there's a strong correlation. Higher evapotranspiration generally means higher species richness for plants and animals. More energy and water support more life.
Okay, so latitude matters. What about just size? Does a bigger area have more species?
Yes, that's the area effect, described as the species area curve. All else being equal, larger areas tend to contain more species. It seems obvious, but the relationship is quite consistent.
Why? Just more space.
More space often means more different types of habitats, more microclimates, more resources, allowing more species to find their niches.
And islands are good places to study this, like natural experiments.
Perfect places. Islands, real islands, but also habitat islands like mountaintops or forest fragments led to the island equilibrium model. This model tries to predict the number of species on an island based on a balance between two things, immigration and extinction.
How new species arrive versus how existing species disappear.
Exactly. And two factors strongly influence these rates. The island's size and its distance from the mainland, the source of immigrants.
Let me guess. Bigger islands have more species, and closer islands have more species.
You got it. Smaller islands are harder targets for immigrants and have higher extinction rates. Smaller populations, fewer resources. Farther islands are harder to reach, lowering immigration, and isolation can also increase extinction risk.
So the number of species reaches an equilibrium, a balance point where immigration equals extinction.
That's the idea. The number stabilizes, but the actual species composition can still change over time as some species arrive and others vanish. It's a dynamic equilibrium.
Has this been tested?
Famously, an experiment in the Florida Keys involved fumigating tiny mangrove islands to kill all the arthropods. than watching them recolonize. The results matched the model's predictions beautifully nearer. Larger islands ended up with more species.
Wow, so geography really sets the stage for biodiversity patterns.
Absolutely. From climate gradients to island biogeography, large-scale factors are fundamental.
Okay, one last major concept from this chapter, and it's one with huge implications for us. Pathogens. How do these tiny disease causers fit into the community picture?
They are powerful, often overlooked, agents of change in communities. Pathogens, disease-causing bacteria, viruses, protists, fungi can dramatically alter community structure.
Like with coral reefs.
Yes. White band disease, likely caused by a bacterium, swept through the Caribbean, killing off dominant staghorn and elkhorn corals. These corals are foundation species, providing habitat structure. Their loss led to algae taking over, shifts in fish populations, and a collapse in overall reef diversity. A pathogen completely changed the ecosystem.
And on land.
Think of sudden oak death, SOD. It's caused by a protist, Phytophthora ramorum, and it's killed millions of oak trees in California and Oregon. Oaks are foundation species too, providing food, acorns, and habitat for many animals, like woodpeckers and titmice. Their loss has cascading effects.
It really highlights how interconnected everything is, and this ties directly into human health, doesn't it? Zoonotic diseases.
Absolutely. Zoonotic pathogens are those transferred from animals to humans, sometimes through an intermediate vector, like a tick or a mosquito. The scary part: about 3/4 of new or emerging human infectious diseases are zoonotic.
Wow, 3/4.
Yeah. So community ecology becomes critical for understanding and preventing these diseases. We need to know which animals are the main hosts, the reservoirs for the pathogen, and which vectors transmit it.
Like with Lyme disease, wasn't there confusion about the main host?
There was. White-footed mice were initially thought to be the key, but further research in some areas show that certain shrew species were actually hosting the majority of the Lyme-infected pigs. Knowing the right host helps target control measures more effectively.
And tracking the spread globally.
Community ecologists play a role there too. Take avian flu, H5N1. It circulates in wild birds. Understanding their migration patterns, like birds moving between Asia and North America, is vital for predicting where the virus might spread next and preventing human outbreaks.
And our own activities make this worse.
Definitely. Global travel and trade move pathogens around the world faster than ever before. The SOD pathogen probably hitched a ride to North America on nursery plants. H1N1 swine flu spread globally in weeks because of air travel.
So, understanding the ecology of pathogens, their hosts and vectors, is essential for public health.
It really is. You can't just look at the disease in humans. You need that ecosystem perspective. Pathogens are a fundamental ecological force.
Okay, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into ecological communities. We've covered a lot of ground.
We really have, from those intricate one-on-one species interactions, competition, predation, mutualism, to the broader patterns of community diversity and trophic structure, the food webs that connect everything.
We talked about how essential species like foundation and keystone species shape their environments, and how communities are constantly changing due to disturbance, which isn't always bad, especially at intermediate levels.
Right, and how geography, the big picture of latitude and area, influences the diversity of life across the planet. And finally, the profound impact of pathogens, linking ecosystem health directly to human health.
The main takeaway: these aren't just abstract ideas in a textbook. They're the rules governing how life works, how ecosystems function, and ultimately how our planet stays healthy.
Absolutely. It's all connected. So maybe a final thought for you listening. Next time you're in a park or even looking at the weeds in your driveway, think about the invisible interactions happening, what competition is going on, what tiny disturbances are shaping that mini community. How might our actions, even small ones, be tipping those balances?
It's a fascinating, complex web, and understanding it helps us appreciate our own place within it. Thanks for diving deep with us today. We hope this look at ecological communities gives you a new lens for viewing the incredible dance of life all around us.